CEO and co-founder. I want to thank Professor Mark DeFonte over at Providence College for joining us earlier. He gave a great oversight to a new initiative over there, a micro MBA program. Greatly appreciate the time he took. And I also want to thank Dr. Fine. He's coming up at 1:30. He's got a big analysis into where the coronavirus is going in Rhode Island. And his outlook is not positive. Very disturbing numbers and very disturbing trends. But let's go to Brett Smiley. He is a candidate for mayor of Providence as a Democrat. Brett, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Josh.
Okay, you had a press conference this morning talking about the issue of crime. I'll recite them quickly. 5 stabbings in the past week, 5 people shot in one incident, a woman murdered over on Only Street by a drive-by shooter, a man run down by a pickup truck on Broad Street, a number of endless crimes, including a mom being dragged out of her car by a gang of ATVs and beaten on the street. How did we get here?
You know, a lot of it has to do with the staffing levels in the Providence Police, and there's always an uptick in crime over the summer, but we're at historically low staffing levels. There's obviously a whole national conversation going on around violent crime and gun crimes and the proliferation of guns in the streets, but also the deterioration of relations between the community and police department. And unfortunately, Providence isn't immune from that. But what I think is more important is what are we going to do about it, which is why this morning I called on elected officials, state and city leaders, to see this as an all hands on deck moment, to accept the help that's being offered, and all get to work in restoring safety to our capital city.
One of the specifics you put out there was, let's get the state police in there. We'd editorialized on it. I think there's a growing movement on it. I spoke to the colonel yesterday. He thought they would be amazingly helpful on the issue of ATVs. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I agree that the crime in Providence will always and should always be primarily handled by Providence Police Department. Providence Police have done a good job over the last several years of becoming more diverse, of having officers from the city who understand the city, that reflect the city. However, because of this unique moment that we're in, of historically low staffing and an uptick in crime, we need to take all the help that we can get. The state police have offered to help. I'm sure there are other partner agencies and surrounding municipalities who would be willing to help. And the state police in particular could be helpful in the ATV issue. These are cross-jurisdictional issues that, riders come and go across city and town lines, and the state police are really well suited to help with that, and we should take them up on that help. I don't know what the motivations are, what might be behind it, but it's like, put your egos aside, put down any political posturing, and then let's just get to work. I care passionately about Providence. As you said, I'm a candidate for mayor in Providence, but everyone in Rhode Island should care about restoring a sense of safety to the capital city. If there's help being offered, we need to take it.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of the narratives that are going on. Cranston Mayor Ken Hopkins issued a press release yesterday, functionally coming one step close to calling for a wall to be built between Cranston and Providence, saying that ATVs confiscated would be shipped back to the Dominican Republic's police departments. Is this a helpful conversation?
I don't think any of the political posturing is helpful. And I talk to leaders in a lot of law enforcement agencies at the state and local levels, and I have a high degree of confidence in their level of professionalism, the quality of the relationships that they have, chief to chief with one another. And I'm confident that they are, in fact, collaborating and trying to do the right thing to keep all of their communities safe and the state safe at the state police level. And so, what I hope we can come together as a community, as a city, as the greater Metro Providence area, as a state, and say, let's set all that aside, no matter who's running for what party you're from, what the relationships may or may not be, kind of how healthy they are. And let's just recognize that there's a lot of residents who don't feel safe, that there is a real, statistically valid, proven uptick in violent crime and gun crimes, and we need to work together. This is not a time to point fingers or to build walls, as you imply, but to actually collaborate and work together for the safety of all of us.
Brett, listen, I grew up in the city, spent most of my life here, either living directly here or working here. This is as tough a week as any of us has seen, on top of some other very tough weeks. 9 people shot on Carolina Street a few weeks ago. Just a series of this. There's been 13 murders. By the way, of the 13 murders, the one on Only Street, I believe, was the first white person murdered. The victims of the shootings and the killings are black and brown folks. They're the ones who are suffering the most in this upswing in crime. This is now hitting every neighborhood. It's hitting everyone of every economic class. And overall, it is creating a sense of huge discomfort and lack of security by people who live in the city. How do you restore the sense of security?
Yeah, I've been in public service a little while, and I have been told and now experienced that public safety is very much a feeling, and no amount of statistics can convince someone that they are or are not safe. And right now, I think that feeling of lack of safety is pervasive. And part of the way in which we start to restore a sense of safety is a feeling that our leaders have a plan, that they're on it, and that they're doing everything possible, which is why I keep coming back to this all hands on deck kind of moment. I believe that we could be doing more, we should be doing more. And we've spent the last couple of minutes talking primarily about policing, and they are a core component to this response, but it's not the only part of our response. And we're fortunate that in Providence, we do have a comprehensive, thoughtful response to public safety, which is more than just policing. And it includes things like recreational opportunities and summer job opportunities and better education, alternative response, so that we can be, treating those suffering from addiction with addiction specialists and freeing up officers to go work on violent crime. Not every 911 call requires an officer with a gun to respond. And we're working towards those solutions. And that's the right way to go, to be comprehensive, to be expansive, to be not just about the way in which we restore confidence that we're heading in the right direction and that Providence is a safe place to live, work, and raise a family is to know that we're doing everything possible and that there's a plan and that our leaders are on it.
Yeah, but Brett, let's talk about staffing levels. For the most part, from the 80s, when Buddy Cianci first became mayor, in the 70s actually, but from around 80 to really through the Cicilline administration, Providence staffing level was at about 500 plus or minus. Angels Ferris had the first major cuts. The city was in financial straits. And then under the Allures administration, you saw a dramatic decrease in staffing. You now have a staffing that's gone down from about 500 to 402 or 403. You take into account a month like July or August, you have some out on disability, you have some out on leave, and then you have vacations. You pile all that up. You've had 2 melees in the city in less than 10 days, in which every officer on duty had to go and intervene in those melees. Big, long, 3-hour battles. In one case, it was neighbors versus neighbors. Providence Police had every single officer on duty up on Sale Street, leaving the rest of the city. The staffing levels have never been seen like this in modern times.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's why it's good that there's a class running right now. I'm happy that got funded and voted on by most of the city council. Those folks are going to graduate. Those cadets are going to graduate towards the end of the year. There's some additional training that occurs, so they won't actually hit the streets until the spring rather. And I do think that we need to get ready for the next class. My understanding is over 100 of the 400 officers are retirement eligible. So there's a real risk that staffing levels could dip even lower. And to the credit of the current mayor, the previous mayor, all the way back to the Cicilline administration, every time we have a new class, they make this announcement about it being the most diverse class in the city's history. And that's great that every class keeps being even more diverse. And so we've done a good job with recruitment as a community. We've done a good job of hiring people with diverse backgrounds, diverse experience, who understand and reflect the community. That's excellent. That's all the more reason that we need to start thinking about the class after this, so that we're not constantly behind the curve, and that we're hiring new officers reflective of the community, receiving the latest training, and prepared to serve in a very difficult environment and to do a very difficult job.
Council President Igliozzi called for community policing. You cannot do community policing with the staffing levels we have right now. You absolutely need about 500 if you're going to do at least one police officer per ward, and then in some of the busier commercial districts that have a lot of crime issues, Kennedy Plaza area, Federal Hill, the pedestrian bridge, places like that, you need a staffing level of 500. If you get elected mayor, is Providence Police Department going to get back to a 500 level?
Yeah, I don't have enough information to say what the magic number is, but it's more than we have now. And I agree that a key component of community policing, it's not the total sum definition of community policing, but a key component of community policing is actually getting to a place where officers can walk the beat, ride their bicycles, get out of their cruisers, break down those barriers to actually build relationships. And in order to do that, it requires more man and woman power than we have today. And so like I said, I'm appreciative of the fact that there is a class now on its way to graduation. I'm supportive of a class immediately following that. And then, if I'm for
I have lost your audio. There you are.
make an educated opinion of what the ideal staffing number is.
Listen, I had Joe Almeida when I was on the city council in the early 90s. I had Joe Almeida was my community police officer over in Mount Hope. He knew every single kid. He knew every single adult. He interacted with folks. He was a man of color. He was widely respected. People understood what he had to say to keep the neighborhood safe. You can't do that unless you get to a high enough level. It's a math issue, or you run the risk of the problems that we're having right now, in which people are calling saying, I'm surrounded by ATV riders, and the police simply can't get there enough. Well, let me just add, why is there no outrage? The mayor hasn't spoken about this in any meaningful way. The Public Safety Commissioner, Steve Perry, which a number of elected officials came out in GoLocal today calling for him to step down. Why is there not that expression of sense of community and outrage about this behavior?
Outrage. I mean, on the campaign trail all the time, including knocking on doors. And it's a top concern that I hear from residents all the time. And so I know city residents are concerned. So I'm not sure that there's not outrage. It's on the front page.
No, I meant by elected officials.
Oh, yeah, you'd have to ask them that question.
Sure.
I know I'm concerned, and I know that it's an issue, which is why I felt so compelled to have a press conference this morning and intend to keep talking about public safety. We have, as a city, and this is a core tenet of my candidacy, I think gotten distracted by kind of shiny objects, big news, whatever the hot topic in the New York Times is, at the expense of our core responsibilities as a city. And I think it is the mayor's job to keep the streets safe, properly care for our infrastructure, and prepare for the return of control of our schools so that we can do a better job of educating our children. That is what we expect from city government. That's the neighborhood quality of life issues. And it's come at the expense of some of these other issues.
Does care of infrastructure mean you're going to fill potholes?
I'm going to fill potholes. I'm going to fix clogged drains so that city streets don't flood. And when we pave a street in our cash-strapped city, I'm going to make sure we don't cut it open again 6 months later and then pay to pave it again.
Oh, God, it doesn't take 6 months. National Grid's out there usually the next day. Last question, last goes to you. What do you have to say to Providence residents on this issue and what you think the city should be doing about it? I don't know that the city can wait 15 months for the next administration. What needs to happen immediately?
I think our elected officials at the city and state level need to hear loud and clear from their constituents that we expect everyone to put their whatever differences aside and work together to solve this problem. This is the most basic responsibility of a city and state leader, to keep us as residents safe. And so we need to work together. They should articulate a plan for what they're going to do to keep us safe so that we can have some confidence that we're heading in the right direction.
Brett Smiley, candidate for mayor of Providence, I appreciate you taking the time. For everybody else, we'll be back at 1:30. Dr. Michael Fine's got some disturbing trend analysis of where Rhode Island is headed in this coronavirus outbreak. This one may be the most serious, as the Delta variant is moving quickly, doubling by the week. Thanks, everybody. Stay safe. If you haven't gotten vaccinated, you are out of friggin' excuses. Get vaccinated. Head over to CVS. It's for you, it's for your family, your friends, and the state's economy. Thanks, everybody.